Yeah, yeah. For what is the flesh? Without the spirit, there's no best. Yeah, yeah. We live in the West, where the sins equal death. See, my earthly body doesn't mean nothing. I'll die for it if it means something. In this world, it's just long suffering. He sent his son because he loved me. I'm serious.
So again, this is part 3, and part 2 we looked at the more terminology and a little background on part 1, but we definitely got into that term, the Negev, which is also coined the South, okay? And basically looking at Abraham's journeys between, I guess, 3 specific places. Like he went to Mitzrayim at one point, he went back and forth between Mitzrayim, between Egypt, and to Canaan, the land of Canaan, and that was the land in which the Most High was going to give to his lineage, okay, to his descendants. And in between those 2 places, in between Egypt and Canaan, there is a place called the Negev, okay, which is also translated as the South. So when they translate it as the South, that just adds more confusion, because what does that mean? It's the South to what, right? So anyway, we took a look at that, and I came to this map to just show that it's talking about elevation, and then we kind of cross-reference that with how the term Jerusalem is used, and how no matter where you start from, people that go to Jerusalem have to go up. Okay, so if Jerusalem, you have to go up no matter where you're coming from, it suggests, again, a mountainous region, which is also what was suggested looking at Abraham's journey. Okay, so it definitely, if you go further down the Nile, you get into higher elevation. And so that's what things appear to be going currently, but we still don't know for sure exactly where Canaan is. And so for that, we need to get into the book of Jubilees. Okay, so this is Jubilees chapter 8, and Jubilees actually gives an incredible detailed information on the territories of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and how their territories break down. Unfortunately, even with all the details, I still can't fully comprehend it. So, and you know, just keep in mind that this whole series and what I'm talking about regarding geography, you know, if anybody has helpful information, comment, you know, post it up, because I'm still definitely trying to piece this together. There's questions that I still have, and I'll bring those up after I get into the rest of all this and, you know, where this is leading me currently. But I will definitely get into my questions, because, you know, there might be somebody that listens to this and has those answers. So anyway, chapter 8, if we go down, I'm just going to start in verse 12. Actually, I guess we should start in verse 11. Okay, so and he called his sons. Okay, this is Noah, and they drew nigh to him, they drew near, they and their children, and he divided the earth into the lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession. Okay, this is how the sons of Noah got their territories of the earth for their children, and on and on and on. And they'll actually give that information too. Okay, so his 3 sons were to take in possession, and they reached forth their hands and took the writing out of the bosom of Noah their father. Okay, and there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons, for the generations of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha. Okay, so he's gonna start describing these areas, okay? And I'm gonna break down how I interpret this, okay? But some of this information I'm not really sure, especially the first portion. So anyway, so from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water from the river Tina. Okay, and this is for Shem, right? And we do know that Shem got the middle of the earth, however, that's interpreted. Okay, so anyway, his portion goes towards the west through the midst of this river, and it extends till it reaches the water of the abysses. Okay, so far, I'm not really sure about this part, but the mountain range of Rapha, I'm wondering if that is what we would consider the Himalayas today. And then it sounds like, assuming the Rapha is the Himalayas, okay? So from the middle of the Himalayas, there's a river that comes out, and his portion goes towards the west through the midst of this river. Okay, so that river is going, it sounds like it goes east and west, and it extends till it reaches the water of the abysses, which I'm not really sure what the water of the abysses is, but it sounds like it's maybe like those big bodies of water in like Asia Minor, like near there. So like the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea is over there, and there's like some smaller ones too. Out of which this river goes forth and pours its waters into the sea Mayat. Okay, so what I think, and me and my wife have been doing a lot of research on this. So this to us sounds like the Mediterranean Sea. And this river flows into the Great Sea. So he sums it up. Okay, so that river that he was talking about hits the abysses, and then from there, the river flows into the Great Sea, which is the Sea of Mayat, or the Sea Mayat. Okay, the Mediterranean. And all that is towards the north is Japheth's, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem. So summed up, there is a river that he's following that comes out of the mountains, and this river, the abysses that it runs into, the mountain range, are markers. Okay, they're markers that flow like horizontally east and west, and they are the border between Japheth's territory, right, in the north. All that is towards the north is Japheth's, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem. So the north of that border between the mountain range and the river and the abysses, everything north is Japheth's, and everything south of that is Shem's. Okay, but I haven't really put together what the actual names of that mountain range and this river is, like what we would consider them today. All that to say, hopefully that gives a little understanding. Let me see if I can get a map here. Okay, so here's the sea, the abysses. That's what I'm interpreting him talking about here, like these bodies of water. And I'm thinking he's talking about this mountain range, okay, which is a huge mountain range. It goes pretty far, like and all the way down here. And I think eventually he's going to come back to this point, but he definitely seems to be going this way, counterclockwise. Okay, so he started in a mountain range, then he started talking about a river, and he said the north is Japheth's and the south is Shem's. Okay, and then he said eventually it gets to the abysses, the water, the abysses, and then it pours into the Sea Mayat, which we believe is the Mediterranean. So at this point, we think he's around here, but he probably started maybe in this mountain range and then eventually got here. So that's why we think, I feel confident that at least in the direction he's going, that he's going counterclockwise, and then he's going to give us more information. Okay, and it extends till it reaches Carousel. This is in the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. So Carousel seems to be a place. It's in the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. So it seems like it's talking about the delta the Egyptian Delta, I guess. I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but let's see. Well, I'll continue going with verse 14. So verse 14, I'll just read it in its entirety, and then we'll take a look at it on the map. And his portion extends along the great sea, and it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. So again, this seems like he's talking about the delta of the Nile. Okay, so let's take a look and let's see. Okay, so here's the this is the Mediterranean. Okay, Cyprus, and then that's what they consider to be Lebanon today. That's the country Lebanon, but this is the area that they consider to be the Holy Land. Okay, so here's the Sinai Peninsula, and then here's Egypt, right? So what I'm saying is, it sounds like Carousel is around this area. So let's go back to what it said. Verse 13. It extends till it reaches Carousel. This is in the bosom of the tongue which looks toward the south. Okay, so I'm thinking Carousel is like this little cove area. Either this one or this one, but based off of what he says next, his portion extends along the Great Sea. Okay, so along the Great Sea. And it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south. Okay, so it goes in a straight line along the Great Sea until it reaches the west of the tongue. Okay, so here's the tongue. Okay, and see how it's looks like it's pointing down towards the south. Okay, so this is actually the end of the Nile River. The Nile River flows north. Okay, so it empties out into the Mediterranean. Okay, and till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks toward the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Mitzrayim Sea, the tongue of the Egyptian Sea. Okay, so that makes sense. It's at the end of the Nile. Okay, all right. So verse 15, and it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the great sea, on the shore of its waters. Okay, so it turns from here towards the south, and here towards the mouth of the great sea, towards the mouth of the Nile, okay, on the shore of its waters, and it extends to the west to Afra. Okay, it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the Nile. Okay, so this is where we were before. This is where like that little cove place, Carousel, and then he said to the west of the tongue that points toward the south, right? So we had started up here, and then he says it continues going south towards the mouth of the Nile. Okay, maybe that's here. Okay, because the Nile then begins to branch. So I'm thinking it's around here, but notice how long the Nile is, because in present day, you've been out of Egypt for a while by the time you get down here. So anyway, let me go back and see what's next. From here towards the south, towards the mouth of the Nile River, on the shore of its waters, and it extends to the west to Afra. Okay, so now we're going to follow something that starts to go west, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the river Gihon. Okay, so let's go back to our map. All right, and we see that once we get here, you start going into the White Nile, which starts to go west. Okay, so then Once you've gone west, let's see what else happens. And it extends to the west to Afra, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the river Gihon, and to the south of the waters of Gihon, to the banks of this river. Okay, so to the banks of the river Gihon, okay. Okay, so once you go west, then you continue to go south until you reach the banks, which is, it actually goes like all the way, I don't know if I can't say for sure, but it seems like Lake Victoria may be the beginning of the White Nile, or either the White Nile appears to begin around Lake Victoria. Okay. Anyway, this is where I'm thinking the banks of the river are, somewhere around here, near Lake Victoria. Okay. It reaches the waters of the river Gihon to the south of the waters of Gihon to the banks of this river, and it extends towards the east. Okay, so now we're going to go right on the map till it reaches the garden, which we don't know where it is, to the south thereof, to the south and from the east of the whole land of Eden. Okay, so he's saying you're going to go east from the banks of the river Gihon, where looks like Gihon starts, till it reaches the garden. Okay, so going back to our map, if you start going east, you're from, around this area, you're now in Kenya. Okay, and then at some point you're going to hit where the garden used to be. In my opinion, I don't think the garden is here anymore. By scripture, it looks like it's somewhere under the earth, in my opinion. If anybody's interested into how I got there, there's an article I wrote a while back on the underworld, on Sheol, and I mentioned where I think the garden, that I think it's under the earth, and why I see that, or how I came to that conclusion according to scripture. Okay, so anyway, that's on my website. You go east until you hit the garden, and then he says you go south. Okay, so then coming down to the south of the garden, right, to the south thereof, and to the south and from the east of the whole land of Eden and of the whole east. Okay, so he's saying from the boundary after you go south, all that is going towards the east is Shem's territory. Okay, so I drew this this line, and this is how I interpret what is being said in Jubilees here, according to the western boundary for Shem. So what I'm saying is all this on the right of the Nile. Okay, and eventually the Nile ends finally, and then like it starts to branch off into the White Nile, and then you follow that down all the way down until you get to around Lake Victoria, right? And then which we go east, and then you go south, and he's saying everything to the east is Shem's. Okay, so that's the boundary that I feel like I have an understanding. Oh, I guess this should go to all like the western portion of the delta. So just imagine this going this way too. But anyway, all this is what is Shem's territory. Okay. Okay, so he's going to keep going, and then we'll take a look at the rest of it. So let me see. So from the east of the whole land of Eden and of the whole east, it turns to the east and proceeds till it reaches the east of the mountain named Rapha. Okay, so now he's back to Rapha, the Rapha mountain, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. So now he's back to the river Tina. So he just made a circular region of the earth counterclockwise. Okay, so in my opinion, again, and I could definitely be wrong. Like, if somebody understands this, please let me know. I'm just trying to piece it together from what I can understand so far. But anyway, so it sounds like he's coming back to the edge of the Himalayas. So let's bring back that map. So remember, this is the Horn of Africa. So then he was like down here somewhere, and he says it goes east again until you get back to the Rafa Mountains. So I don't know if that's here or if that's here, maybe it could be here. But that's the way I'm reading it. It seems like it's this mountain range, but I could be wrong. In any case, he is going this way, right? And he comes back to where he began with the mountain range and that river.